By the time Alpha King Rowan Karrick threw Freya Ashden's moon keys into the mud, the Hidden Refuge Yard had already decided she was guilty. Rain beat down over the old stone enclosure, turning the yard black beneath royal boots and warden chains. 12 refuge doors curved along the wall behind Freya, each sealed by a moon-silver lock, each marked with a mercy rune nearly worn away by years of desperate hands. Those doors had once meant safety. Tonight, under the Iron Crown banners, they looked like prison mouths waiting to be renamed. Freya stood in the center of the yard with her throat bare where the keys had hung for 7 years. Mud stained the hem of her gray keeper's dress. Her wrists were not bound. Callus Farn had wanted them bound, but Rowan had forbidden it with one cold look. She did not kneel. Freya Ashden, Callus read, his voice smooth through the rain. Oath-bound keeper of the Hidden Refuge Yard, is charged with sheltering traitors, hiding unregistered wolves, refusing royal inspection, altering refuge records, and placing mercy law above the authority of the crown. A few elders nodded. Several soldiers looked away. Freya kept her eyes on the keys in Rowan's fist. 12 moon-silver keys, 1 for widows, 1 for beaten mates, 1 for hunted omegas, 1 for border wolves who had lost papers during raids, 1 for nameless households erased from the count because no officer wanted to admit they had survived, 1 for old debt-bound men whose packs had sold them twice. Callus had not named any of that. He had named only treason. Alpha King Rowan Karrick stood beside the judgment stone, tall beneath a black wolf fur cloak, his iron crown dark against the storm. He looked like a king carved for war, not mercy. His gray eyes rested on Freya as if he expected her to beg. She did not. "Did any of them name the lives I saved?" she asked. The yard tightened. Callus lowered the parchment. "You do not get to choose which lives count as loyal." "No," Freya said, "but I know the difference between a traitor and a woman running with half her ribs broken." A thin sound moved through the witnesses. Recognition quickly smothered. Callus's left hand twitched toward the leather ledger under his arm. He caught himself too late. Freya saw it. So did Rowan. "There it is," Callus said. Defiance dressed as compassion. She speaks of bruises while hiding enemies behind sacred locks. Rowan's gaze shifted to Freya. "You refused royal inspection 3 times. "I refused him," Freya said, nodding toward Callus. "Careful," Callus warned. Freya turned her face toward him. Rain ran down her cheek like a tear she refused to give. "I was careful. That is why some of them are still alive." Rowan stepped closer. The moon keys glimmered faintly in his fist, though no torchlight touched them. Under the refuge punishment decree, no keeper may conceal an unregistered wolf after moonfall. You knew this. I knew your decree, and you broke it. I kept an older one. Callus laughed softly. There is no older law that protects treason. Freya looked past him to the sealed doors. A refuge key does not obey the crown. It obeys the hand that last saved a life behind it. The moon keys did not name traitors. They did not crown keepers. They did not open for pity. They returned only to locks where a living refuge claim had been broken, falsified, or forced back into the hands it had escaped. For the first time, Rowan looked toward the locks. Callus spoke too quickly. "Old keeper superstition, Majesty. She used it to deny inspection. She built a hidden kingdom beneath yours." "No," Freya said. "I kept your wardens from dragging bleeding women back to men with legal names." Callus's smile thinned. Rowan lifted one hand and the yard stilled. Enough. The word had weight. Even the guards lowered their chins. "You were given those keys by royal appointment," Rowan said. "You held them under my seal. I held them before your decree. My seal made you keeper." Freya's voice dropped. Mercy made the refuges. Callus stepped in before Rowan could answer. Majesty, she has admitted disobedience before all witnesses. The keys must be revoked before moonfall. Once darkness falls, any traitor inside can vanish through the lower runs. There it was. Freya heard the real move beneath the charge. Before moonfall, before the ledgers could be opened properly, before the people inside could speak, before any lock could answer a hand not chosen by Callus. Rowan's fingers closed around the moon keys. For one aching second, Freya thought he might ask who was inside. Instead, he said, Freya Ashden, by authority of the Iron Crown and the Refuge Punishment Decree, I revoke your keeper's right. The sentence entered her like cold iron. Rowan held the keys out. Then he turned his wrist and threw them down. They struck the mud at Freya's feet with a small, brutal sound. Silver vanished beneath black water. Someone laughed near the back wall. Freya did not look down. Callus did. His eyes searched the mud too quickly. Counting. 1, 2, 3. His mouth tightened. His thumb rubbed hard against the left edge of the ledger. Rowan noticed. No keeper, Rowan said, voice carrying through the storm, will touch these doors until royal inspection is complete. At moonfall, every sealed refuge becomes crown property. A woman in the witness line made a broken sound. Freya turned. Mara Belwyn stood beneath a soaked hood, face pale, hands clenched at her waist. Freya had hidden her 3 months ago after Mara's husband's brother tried to claim her house, her stores, and her body under debt law. Callus saw the glance. Mara Belwyn, he called. Step forward. Mara froze. Freya moved one step before the soldiers could. Callus's brows lifted. Still protecting witnesses from royal truth? She is not your witness, Freya said. She signed a statement. She cannot read. The words cut through the rain. Mara began to tremble. Callus lifted the ledger. A mark is a mark under refuge record. Freya looked at Rowan. Ask him which hand she marked with. Callus shut the ledger too fast. The crack of leather against paper echoed across the yard. Rowan turned his head. Slowly. Open it, he said. Callus bowed. Majesty, the rain will damage. Open it. Callus opened the ledger. Freya did not step closer. Mara Belwyn's right wrist was broken when she came to the refuge. If the statement bears a right-hand mark, it was not hers. Mara sobbed once and pressed her healed wrist against her chest. Rowan looked from the ledger to Freya, and his expression changed. Not apology, not trust. Something sharper. Attention with teeth. Show me the mark, he said. Callus lowered his eyes to the page. At Freya's feet, the mud rippled. Not from rain. The place where the moon keys had fallen began to sink inward. One by one, small dark holes opened in the mud. Empty holes. The keys were gone, not returned to Freya. Not stolen by the mud, taken back by the locks that still held living claims. Callus stared down, all color draining from his face. Rowan stepped forward. Where are the keys? No one answered. Then the farthest refuge lock on the western wall clicked. Every head turned. The door did not open. The moon-silver lock simply turned once from the inside. Behind it, muffled by stone, a woman screamed. Freya lifted her head. Callus whispered, Impossible. And around the hidden refuge yard, one by one, the sealed locks began to wake. Rowan looked from the waking locks to Callus Varn's closed ledger. His voice did not soften. Who is inside those doors? Callus Varn answered before the western lock clicked a second time. Illegal wolves, he said too quickly. Hidden bodies. Frightened traitors trying to escape inspection before moonfall. The lock clicked again. No door opened. No face appeared. Only the moon-silver mechanism turned once from the inside, then held as if something behind the stone had reached for mercy and been refused by law. Rain ran down the refuge wall in black lines. The old mercy rune above the western door glowed faintly, then dimmed, then glowed again. Rowan Karrick did not look at Freya. He looked at Callus. I asked who was inside those doors. Callus bowed with the careful patience of a man explaining danger to a court that wanted comfort. Majesty, that is precisely why inspection must proceed without delay. If she has hidden unregistered wolves, enemy runners, debt fugitives, or oath breakers. Names, Rowan said. The word cut through the rain. Callus's mouth tightened. Freya did not thank Rowan for the question. She did not look at him with softened eyes. A king asking late was still a king who had thrown her keys into the mud. Instead, she watched the western lock. It had turned once. Only once. Not full opening. Not release. Claim. The lock is not trying to open, she said. Callus turned on her. You will not interpret royal evidence after your keys have been revoked. My keys are not in my hand. No, he said, because His Majesty removed them. Freya looked at the western refuge. Then why is that lock answering me? The yard went still in a different way. Rowan's gaze shifted to the door. Explain. Freya stepped no closer. She knew better than to cross a live refuge threshold while a claim was waking. A mercy lock turns 3 times to open, twice to warn, once to testify that a living claim has been broken. Callus gave a short laugh. Convenient. Another secret rule spoken only after she is caught. Freya's eyes remained on the rune. Not secret. Ignored. The old mark above the western lock brightened again, thin as breath. Rowan saw it. So did several soldiers. One of them whispered an old word under his breath and made the moon sign against his chest before he remembered the king was watching. Callus snapped the ledger shut. This is why keepers became dangerous. They turned mercy into a private language. Freya turned toward him. No, you turned records into weapons. Enough, Rowan said, but this time the command was not aimed only at her. He held out his hand. The ledger. Callus hesitated for less than a heartbeat. It was enough. Rowan noticed. So did Freya. Callus placed the leather-bound book in Rowan's hand, but he kept 2 fingers pressed to the left margin until Rowan's grip forced him to let go. The gesture was small, possessive, afraid. Rowan opened the ledger beneath the rain. Ink glistened on the page but did not run. Refuge ink had been made to survive weather, fire, smoke, and blood. It had never been made to survive lies. Mara Belwyn, Rowan said, reading the name. Mara stood near the witness line with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had whitened. Freya heard her breathing from across the yard. Callus spoke before anyone asked him. Her statement confirms Freya Ashden sheltered her without legal registration. That is enough. She cannot read, Freya said again. A mark is accepted under refuge procedure when witnessed by a warden. You witnessed it? I did. With which hand? Callus's eyes flicked toward Mara. She marked as she was able. Freya looked at Rowan. Read the date. Rowan's thumb moved down the page. 3rd night after Frostwane moon. Mara made a small, wounded sound. Callus's expression sharpened. Dates do not change the law. They change the body, Freya said. Rowan looked up. Freya kept her voice level, though every word tasted like wet iron. Mara Belwyn came to the refuge on the 1st night after Frostwane moon. Her right wrist was broken in 2 places. She could not hold a spoon. She could not close her hand around cloth. I wrapped it myself. Mara swallowed hard. Rain clung to her lashes. She did, she whispered. Callus turned toward her. Careful, widow. Freya moved 1 step. Rowan's voice stopped the guards before they moved with her. No one touches Mara Belwyn. It was not an apology. It was not trust. But it was protection, sharp and public. Callus bowed stiffly. Majesty, broken wrists heal, marks remain lawful. Freya looked at him then fully. A healed wrist can hold a cup. It cannot sign a statement made before it mended. The western lock clicked once more. Not opening, answering. The rune above it flared pale silver, and a thin line of light ran across the ledger page in Rowan's hand. It did not write a name. It did not accuse Callus. It did not save Freya. It marked the date. Third night after Frostwane moon. Then another line burned below it. Faint, but clear. Bone set not complete. Mara covered her mouth. Callus stepped forward. Keeper trickery. Freya did not look at him. She looked at the shape of the burn. No. Lock record. Rowan's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Freya pointed but did not touch the page. The western lock held Mara's first claim. When she entered, it recorded the injury that made her unable to return. Broken wrist, bruised ribs, threat under debt law. It would not have accepted a right-hand mark before bone set. Callus's jaw hardened. The refuge lock records need, not legal capacity. It records both when a claim is contested. Rowan looked at Callus. You said her mark confirmed the statement. It does. The lock says her hand could not make it. The lock is reacting to illegal pressure from inside the refuge. From whom? Rowan asked. Callus had no answer ready. That frightened him more than anger would have. Behind the western door, the muffled woman screamed again, shorter this time, as if a hand had been clamped over her mouth. The soldiers nearest the wall stepped back. None of them drew steel. Steel meant little against old refuge law. Freya's breath caught, but she did not run to the door. Running would let Callus call it panic. Touching the lock would let him call it interference. So she did the only thing left to her. She read the order. Western lock first, she said. Not widow key, not hunted key, western border claim. Callus's face went still. Rowan heard the change in her voice. Meaning? Freya looked at Mara. Mara was hidden in the South Refuge. The western lock should not be answering her statement unless the record was moved. Mara shook her head faintly. I was never taken west. Callus lifted his chin. Refuge assignments are changed for security. By whom? Freya asked. By the warden. You? His smile returned, thin and cold. Yes. Freya looked at the ledger again. Then show the transfer mark. Rain struck the leather cover. No one moved. Rowan turned the page. Callus's hand shot out. Majesty, that section contains sealed refuge routes. Rowan stopped with his fingers on the page. Freya did not plead. She knew Rowan Karrick would not move because she wanted him to. He would move only if the law itself forced him to see where his order had been used. So she said, If it is lawful, let the lock hear it. The western lock gave a third sound. Not a turn. A record strike. Still, the door did not open. Instead, the moon-silver keyhole darkened, and a sliver of black mud pushed out from within the lock, falling to the stone like a clot. Callus stared at it. Freya stared too. Western mul. Not refuge mud. Not yard mud. Storehouse mud. Callus's private storehouse stood west of the yard. Rowan saw where Freya was looking. His voice lowered. Open the transfer mark. Callus did not move. Rowan turned the page himself. A right-hand print sat beneath Mara Belwyn's name. Beside it, the date glowed under the lock's thin silver burn. Third night after Frostwane moon. Below that, the western lock burned one final line across the page, not in accusation, but in record. Mara Belwyn's statement marked before her right wrist healed. Rowan looked from the burned line to the black mud fallen from the western lock. His voice did not soften. Why is storehouse mud inside a mercy lock? The black mud did not spread in the rain. It sat beneath the western lock in a small, thick clot, darker than the soaked stone around it, refusing to thin, refusing to wash into the yard. Rain struck it and slid off as if the mud had a skin. Callus Varn looked at the mud before he looked at the king. That was Freya's first answer. Rowan Karrick saw it too. He still held the open refuge ledger in both hands, the burned line pale across the page. Mara Belwyn's statement marked before her right wrist healed. His voice did not soften. Why is storehouse mud inside a mercy lock? Callus straightened slowly. Majesty, storehouse mud could enter through supply traffic, repair routes, runoff from the west wall. The refuges are old, their locks are older. A little mud proves nothing except poor maintenance. Freya did not look at Rowan. She looked at the keyhole. Not runoff, she said. Callus turned on her. You have lost the right to speak as keeper. I lost the keys, Freya said. Not my eyes. A few soldiers shifted. Rowan did not defend her. He did not apologize. He only said, let her answer. Freya stepped no closer to the door. Runoff leaves a smear down the outer plate. Supply traffic marks the threshold. Repair mud dries in the hinge cuts. She pointed but did not touch. That mud came from inside the groove. Callus's mouth hardened. A groove can carry dirt for years. Not that dirt. And now she knows mud by scent? He asked the yard, almost smiling. Freya turned toward him. Yes. The smile failed. The western storehouse sits over iron peat, she said. Black, heavy, sour under rain. It stains silver blue at the edge. She looked back at the lock. Refuge mud is red clay under the topsoil. Yard mud is ash, black, and thin. This is neither. Rowan lowered his gaze to the small clot. Callus lifted his chin. Even if it came from the storehouse, emergency supplies move through the west side. A refuge under threat can be reassigned. I have authority to relocate hidden persons when security demands it. Mara was never moved west, Freya said. Mara Belwyn is not the only person tied to that lock. No, Freya answered. But her record is. The western lock gave no sound this time. The mercy rune only pulsed once, weak as a wounded heartbeat. Callus seized on the silence. See? Nothing. The lock gives her no answer because she has invented the question. Freya's eyes dropped to the ledger in Rowan's hands. Turn back one page. Callus moved. Majesty, that section contains refuge transfer orders. Rowan did not look at him. Then it contains the answer. He turned the page. Freya kept her face still, though the sight hurt. There were names there she had hidden with her own hands, rewritten in Callus's sharp black script, as if they had always belonged to him. Dates. Doors. Marks. Small lines that could send a frightened person back into a house, a debt chain, a punishment yard. She found Mara's line by the spacing. Read the transfer date, she said. Rowan's thumb stopped. 6th night after Frostwane moon. Mara whispered. I was still fevered then. Callus said quickly. Emergency reassignment protects hidden refugees. It does not require a full waking ceremony. Freya looked at him. Protection does not move a woman's record before her door knows she left. The words landed hard. Rowan looked from the ledger to the western lock. Explain. Freya pointed to the burned mark near Mara's name. The statement was dated 3rd night after Frostwane moon. The transfer order says 6th night. But the western lock answered Mara's statement before any lawful transfer existed. That means her record had already been moved west. Callus's eyes narrowed. Or, the lock is confused by your illegal handling. I never handled the Western Lock for Mara. You expect the court to believe memory over record? No, Freya said. I expect the record to survive itself. The rain deepened. Somewhere behind the sealed doors, a low sound moved through stone, not a scream this time, but a muffled shifting, as if people inside had heard enough to hope and were afraid of hope. Freya knew that sound. Not guilty terror. Used terror. Rowan turned another half page. Callus's hand flexed. Freya saw the mark before Rowan did. A narrow transfer slash in the left margin, nearly hidden under a dark thumb smear. Not a full warden order, a pre-mark. The kind a clerk used to prepare a move before approval. Callus had tried to rub it dull. Left margin, Freya said. Callus snapped. That is clerical preparation. Rowan's eyes fixed on the slash. Prepared when? Callus did not answer fast enough. Freya did. Before the transfer order. Before the 6th night. Before Mara could lawfully be moved. Callus laughed once, cold and sharp. Prepared records are common. Refuge work is dangerous. We plan routes before we use them. Then the route should be sealed without a lock response. It was sealed. No. Freya looked at the western door. The lock groove says it was fed. Rowan's head turned slightly. Fed? With a key, she said. A mercy lock holds the shape of the last key that entered it. If the record was only prepared, no key should have touched this lock for Mara. The western rune brightened. Callus went very still. Freya did not smile, but storehouse mud came out of the keyhole. Someone carried a key from the western storehouse, entered Mara's record into the western lock, then wrote the lawful transfer 3 nights later. Rowan stared at Callus. Callus's voice stayed controlled, but his left thumb began to rub the ledger edge, though the book was no longer in his hands. Majesty, she is building treason from stains and old keeper riddles. Freya looked at Rowan at last. There was no softness in her face. You wanted names. Records have names. Locks have order. Mud has place. He used your decree to make all 3 lie. Rowan's jaw tightened, but still he gave no apology. Can the lock prove the order? It can record sequence, Freya said. Not guilt. Then record sequence. Callus took a step forward. Majesty, Rowan's eyes cut to him. Do not. Freya turned toward the western lock. She did not touch it. She only spoke the old keeper phrase in a voice steady enough to make the rain seem louder. If the record was lawful, keep still. If the record moved before the door received its order, strike once. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the moon-silver keyhole flashed white. The ledger in Rowan's hands burned again, not with flame, but with cold light. A new line carved itself beneath the first, each letter forming slowly enough for every witness near the judgment stone to read. Mara Belwyn's record moved west before transfer order was written. Rowan looked from the cold-lit ledger to the black mud beneath the western lock. His voice did not soften. Who carried the storehouse key before the transfer order existed? Callus Varn answered before anyone looked toward the western storehouse. Storehouse keys are carried by more hands than mine, he said. Supply wardens, repair boys, night guards, moonfall clerks. If a key passed west before a transfer order, that proves only that the yard was being prepared for emergency use. The black mud beneath the western lock remained still. Rowan Karrick kept the ledger open. The cold-lit line had faded, but the words had not vanished. Mara Belwyn's record moved west before transfer order was written. His voice did not soften. Who carried the storehouse key before the transfer order existed? Callus spread his hands, careful and clean. Majesty, no one can answer that from memory in the rain. The access log is kept inside the West Supply office. It may show 20 hands on that door in a week. Bring it. A guard moved. Callus's head turned too fast. Majesty, if the storehouse has been compromised, sending men there without full inspection may disturb evidence. Freya looked at him then. Callus had never feared disturbance. He feared order. The log does not need to come from the storehouse, she said. Callus's eyes cut to her. Again, she invents procedure. No! Freya pointed toward the ledger in Rowan's hands. Storehouse access wax is pressed onto the key log edge and copied into the refuge ledger when a supply route touches a mercy lock. It keeps wardens from moving food, bodies, or records without leaving the same trail in both books. Rowan looked down at the ledger's left edge. Callus smiled thinly. A dead custom. Most clerks stopped marking wax years ago. Not refuge clerks, Freya said. His smile tightened. Rowan turned the ledger sideways. Rain struck the page. The ink held. Along the leather edge, half covered beneath old thumb darkness, a narrow strip of dull gray wax clung like a scar. Freya did not touch it. Left edge, she said, below the transfer slash. Rowan's thumb moved there. Callus took a step. Majesty, that wax could belong to any root. Rowan stopped him with a look. Freya read the shape from where she stood. Not any route. Storehouse wax is pressed with a square tooth mark. Refuge wax is crescent cut. Repair wax has a hinge stamp. That one is square. A young clerk near the witness line swallowed hard. Freya heard him. Callus heard him too. Bryn, Callus said softly. The clerk flinched. Rowan looked up. Step forward. The boy stepped out from behind two guards. He was not a child, but young enough to still carry fear in his shoulders instead of hiding it behind rank. Rain plastered his pale hair flat. His fingers were ink-stained and trembling. Callus's voice gentled. That made it worse. Clerk Bryn keeps supply copies, Majesty. He is nervous because Freya Ashden has frightened the yard with old lock tales. Freya watched Bryn's hands. Not guilty hands. Pressed hands. His right thumbnail was black with access wax. Rowan saw her looking. What? Freya kept her eyes on the clerk. He pressed the copy. Bryn shook his head once, almost too small to see. Callus said, He performs many clerical duties. Not on the third night after Frostwane Moon, Freya said. He was assigned to lamp tally then. Bryn's face went pale. Rowan looked back at the ledger. How do you know? Because I asked for oil that night, Freya said. Mara's fever was high. The South Refuge lamp died twice. Bryn brought oil himself because the night guard would not enter Mercy Ground after moonrise. Bryn looked at her then, and shame moved through him like a blade. Callus snapped. Memory again. Freya's voice stayed steady. No. Clerk pressure. Rowan's attention sharpened. Freya pointed to the wax strip. A frightened clerk presses too hard at the top. See the square tooth? The upper edge is crushed. Bryn always pressed evenly. Someone stood over him. Bryn's mouth opened, then shut. Callus took another step. This is absurd, Rowan said. No one speaks to the clerk except me. The yard stilled. It was not tenderness. It was not absolution. But Rowan had placed his authority between Callus and the weakest witness in the yard. Bryn, Rowan said, was the storehouse key checked out before Maribelwyn's transfer order? Bryn's lips trembled. Callus did not move. He did not need to. His silence pressed harder than his hand would have. Freya said nothing. She knew if she comforted the clerk, Callus would call it influence. If she begged Rowan to believe him, Rowan would hear petition instead of evidence. So she watched the wax. The western lock gave one dry strike. Not a turn. Record. Bryn flinched as if struck. Callus lifted his chin. Emergency supply routes are prepared in advance. A route can be readied before a formal order. That is not unlawful, it is efficient. Freya turned to him. A route can be prepared. A woman's refuge record cannot be moved before her door is tolled. The words pulled another sound from the western wall. Behind the sealed door, someone sobbed once, then nothing. Rowan's jaw worked. For the first time, he looked not only at Callus, not only at Freya, but at the decree seal stamped at the top of the page. His seal, his order, his authority sitting above Callus's altered sequence like a roof overwrought. He did not apologize, but his grip changed on the ledger. "Read the access wax," he said. Callus's face hardened. "Majesty, that requires a heated blade. In this rain," Freya spoke before he could build another delay. "A mercy lock can read its sister wax if the route touched its groove." Rowan looked at her. "Will it name a carrier?" "No," Freya said. "Sequence only. Key out." Key returned. Wax pressed. Order written. Callus exhaled. "There. Even she admits it cannot name anyone." Freya looked back at the western lock. "It does not need to name anyone yet." Rowan turned the ledger so the wax edge faced the lock. Callus's left hand curled against his side. Freya saw the movement. So did Bryn. The western keyhole darkened. A thin thread of cold silver light reached from the lock to the wax strip, not touching flesh, not touching Freya, only the record that had survived under dirty hands. The wax softened without melting. 4 marks rose from it, pale and sharp. Key out. Wax pressed. Key returned. Transfer order written. Bryn covered his mouth. Callus spoke quickly. "Prepared in advance, Majesty. Emergency supply preparation, entirely lawful." Rowan's eyes did not leave the page. Dates. The silver thread tightened. The ledger burned a new line beneath Mara Belwyn's transfer record. Storehouse key checked out before Mara's transfer order existed. The young clerk made the mistake of breathing too loudly. Bryn's hand rose halfway to his throat, then stopped when he realized half the yard had turned toward him. Rain ran down his pale face. Ink stained 2 of his fingers. Access wax clung black beneath one thumbnail. Callus Varn moved first. "Majesty," he said, "the clerk should be removed before panic turns a supply error into treason. If storehouse access was mishandled, we must preserve testimony properly." Bryn's face emptied. Freya did not look at Rowan Karrick. A king asking late was still a king holding a ledger under his own seal. She looked at Callus instead. "No." Callus turned slowly. "No? Do not lock away the smallest hand in the yard because a larger one used it." The rain seemed to strike harder. Rowan did not apologize. He did not soften. But he lifted one hand before the guards could move. "No one removes Clerk Bryn." Callus bowed, but the bow was stiff. "Majesty." "With respect." "With respect," Rowan said, cold as iron. "You answer too quickly when evidence moves near you." That did not accuse him. It still changed the yard. 2 soldiers looked at Callus, then away. Mara Belwyn kept one hand pressed to her healed wrist. The western lock gave no sound, but the black mud below it remained thick and separate, refusing the rain. Rowan looked down at the burned line in the ledger. Storehouse key checked out before Mara's transfer order existed. "Emergency routes can be prepared in advance," Callus said. "The refuge punishment decree allows crown override when hidden persons may endanger the pack." Freya heard the opening he wanted. He did not need to prove the transfer clean. He only needed to hide behind Rowan's decree. She stepped 1 pace closer to the judgment stone, still far from the lock, still far from the ledger. A route can be prepared. A woman's refuge record cannot be moved before her door is tolled. Callus's eyes sharpened. "That is keeper procedure. You are no longer keeper." "No," Freya said. "I am not." The words hurt more than she let show. The moon keys were not at her throat. Rowan had thrown them down. The court had watched them vanish. The title Callus wanted dead had been stripped from her in rain and mud. But some oaths did not hang from a chain. Rowan looked up. Then what are you claiming? Freya met his eyes, and there was no softness in her face. I am claiming the record cannot be closed by the same authority that may have broken it. Callus laughed once. Listen to her, Majesty. She admits it. She places herself above crown law. No, Freya said. I place witness beneath mercy law, where the crown wrote it before it forgot. The western rune pulsed once, not bright, not dramatic, only enough for those nearest the wall to see the old curve of it wake under rain. Callus spoke quickly. Mercy witnesses ended 2 reigns ago. Royal appointment ended, Freya said. The oath did not. Rowan's gaze changed. Not trust. Recognition with a blade behind it. Freya turned toward the western lock. A keeper opens refuge. A warden records refuge. A king governs refuge. Her voice lowered. A mercy witness proves when all 3 lie. The yard held still. Bren's breath broke. Mara Belwyn closed her eyes. Callus took 1 step forward. This is an invention. A traitor accused becomes an ancient officer the moment the ledger turns against her. Freya did not answer him. She looked at the black mud beneath the lock. The moon keys did not return to me. They returned to claims still alive enough to answer. If my keeper right is broken, the locks should be silent to me now. Rowan looked at the western door. And if they are not, then Callus revoked the wrong title. Callus's mouth tightened. There, the fear again. Not loud, not panicked. Buried in the left corner of his jaw where power hated being named. Freya faced the lock but did not touch it. If Freya Ashden stands only as revoked keeper, keep still. If mercy witness standing remains unbroken, strike once. For a moment, nothing moved but rain. Then the western lock gave 1 dry strike. Not a turn. Record. The sound went through the yard like bone under stone. A silver line ran from the keyhole to the ledger in Rowan's hands. It did not burn beneath Mara Belwyn's name this time. It moved to Freya's old keeper mark, where Callus's revocation notation sat wet and black. The ink curled away. A colder script appeared beneath it. Freya Ashden. Mercy witness standing unbroken. Callus inhaled sharply before he could stop himself. Rowan looked from the cold-lit words to Freya. His voice did not soften. How many records can a mercy witness reopen? A guard dropped the chain meant for Freya's wrists. The sound rang across the Hidden Refuge Yard, bright and foolish in the rain. No one laughed this time. The western lock had struck for her. The ledger in Rowan Karrick's hands still carried the cold words Callus Varn had feared. Freya Ashden. Mercy witness standing unbroken. Callus recovered before the yard could. If she is a mercy witness, he said, then she is bound by witness burden. Let her reopen every refuge record now. Let every hidden name be read aloud before the crown. Mara Belwyn flinched. So did others in the witness line. Freya understood the move before Callus finished speaking. He did not need to disprove her standing. He needed to make it dangerous. If Freya opened every record, every widow, hunted wolf, debt-bound servant, and broken mate she had hidden, would be dragged into royal sight before protection was restored. If she refused, Callus would call it concealment. Rowan looked at Freya. Can you reopen them? Yes. The answer moved through the yard. Callus smiled. Then do it. Freya did not move. No. A hard murmur rose. Callus turned to the witnesses. You see? She claims ancient authority, then refuses lawful examination. Freya's voice cut through his. A mercy witness does not expose the protected to satisfy the guilty. Callus's eyes hardened. Convenient mercy. Measured mercy, she said. A witness reopens the broken claim, not every living wound behind a door. Rowan's gaze stayed on her. Then which claim? Freya looked at the black mud beneath the western lock. The one he moved. Callus stepped forward. Majesty, she is directing inquiry away from the larger danger. The western storehouse may already be compromised. If traitors used those routes, if, Freya said, his jaw tightened. She turned toward Rowan. Not soft, not pleading. You asked how many records I can reopen. The answer is, only those the lock still holds as living claims. Mara's claim answered because someone forced her record west before lawful transfer. That is the path. Callus lifted his hand. Then she must be contained while the path is inspected. A mercy witness cannot walk free among records she may alter. There it was. The harder counterattack. Not chains for a traitor, chains for a witness. Rowan's eyes narrowed. Contained how? Callus did not hesitate. Witness isolation. No speech with claimants, no contact with locks, no access to ledgers unless held by Crown authority. It is old procedure. Old procedure, Freya said. For false witnesses. Callus smiled. 4 dangerous ones. The rain chilled against her skin. Freya felt every door behind her, not as magic, not as power, but as memory. People breathing in dark stone rooms because she had once chosen to break a decree rather than return them to hands that could kill them legally. She looked at Rowan. If you isolate me now, the only voice left beside those doors is his. Rowan did not answer. That silence hurt more than a blade, because it had shape. It was the same shape as the decree. Law first, people later. Callus saw it and pressed. Majesty, she is asking you to abandon inspection because she can make locks perform. No, Freya said. I am asking him to inspect the thing that moved before the law allowed it. She turned to Bryn. The clerk stood shaking beneath rain and shame. Do not speak, she told him. Callus's smile flickered. Freya looked back to the ledger. Show the access page. Not the names. The page edge. Rowan turned it. Callus moved again. Majesty. Still, Rowan said. The word stopped him. Freya studied the edge from where she stood. The page was damp, but the refuge ink held. A strip of access wax clung along the margin. There were 2 pressure marks, one square, one dragged. A third mark lay beneath them, almost hidden by blackened wax. Freya's chest tightened. Not storehouse. Crown. Rowan saw the change in her face. What? Freya did not want to say it. Not because it protected Callus, because it cut toward the man holding the ledger. There is a crown pressure mark beneath the storehouse wax. Callus's relief came too quickly. Exactly. The decree authorized emergency movement. Freya looked at him. No. Crown pressure above a lawful order sits clean. This one is buried under the false route. It was used first. Rowan went very still. Callus turned to him. Majesty, every refuge action since the decree bears crown force. That proves nothing except obedience to your law. Freya's voice lowered. Your law was used before the record was made lawful. The western lock gave no sound. Instead, the ledger seal at the top of the page darkened. Not burning. Bleeding ink. Rowan stared at his own mark as black rainwater pooled in the grooves of the iron crown. Freya did not look away from him. I said he used your decree to make records lie. I did not say the lock would spare you from seeing it. For the first time, something like anger crossed Rowan's face. Not at her. Not yet at himself. At the page, Callus stepped in fast. This is precisely why she must be restrained. She has turned the crown seal into spectacle. Freya lifted her chin. Then let the crown seal answer sequence. Rowan's fingers tightened around the ledger. Callus went pale. Majesty, crown seals are not subject to refuge witness. Freya said, They are when they touch mercy ground. Rain struck the yard. The western lock gave one record strike. The crown seal bled darker. Then cold letters formed beneath it, slower than before, heavier, as if the page itself resisted naming royal failure. Crown override used before Maribelwyn's lawful transfer. The yard went silent without anyone ordering it. Callus whispered, Mercy fraud. Freya looked at Rowan Karrick. She did not forgive him. She did not comfort him. She only said, Now you know which hand made his lie powerful. Rowan looked from the bleeding seal to the sealed western door. His voice did not soften. Who had authority to use my crown override before the order existed? The youngest guard stepped backward from the western wall. Not from Freya. From the crown seal bleeding on the ledger. Rain slid over the page in Rowan Karrick's hands, but the cold letters stayed. Crown override used before Maribelwyn's lawful transfer. Callus Varn did not look frightened now. He looked ready. That authority came from your decree, Majesty, he said. Not from forgery. Not from theft. From the emergency powers you granted to the refuge office after the border raids. Rowan's eyes lifted slowly. Callus bowed, but his voice grew stronger. The decree permits preemptive crown override when hidden persons may threaten pack security. I used the authority you gave me. The yard shifted. There it was. Not confession. Shelter. Callus had stepped behind Rowan's own law and dared the king to strike through himself to reach him. Freya felt the blow before anyone looked at her. A decree could be wrong in private and still powerful in public. A king could doubt a warden and still be trapped by his own seal. Rowan said nothing. Callus turned toward the elders. A mercy witness cannot challenge crown emergency law without becoming subject to witness isolation. If Freya Ashden continues, every refuge record she touches may be tainted by rebellion against the crown. Maribelwyn whispered, No. Callus did not glance at her. She must be removed from the locks until moonfall. The western door gave a faint sound. Not a strike, a held breath. Freya looked at Rowan. If you isolate me now, the locks keep their claims, but no one reads them. Callus answered before Rowan could. Exactly, until lawful inspection. By you? By the crown. Freya's mouth tightened. Those have become the same thing. The words cut too close. Rowan looked at her then, and something hard moved in his face. Not anger at her courage, not yet guilt. The first clean recognition that his law had given another man a royal hand. Callus saw it and moved faster. He pulled a folded writ from inside his coat. Freya knew the paper before he opened it. Witness, isolation, old ink, new seal. Callus held it high enough for the elders to see. Signed under decree authority. If a revoked keeper claims mercy witness standing while under treason review, she is to be held apart from locks, claimants, and ledgers until crown judgment. Rowan's gaze fixed on the seal, his order. Freya did not step back when two guards moved toward her. Fear had a taste, and she had swallowed worse than this in darker rooms. Rowan's voice cut across the yard. Stop. The guards froze. Callus turned sharply. Majesty, if you stop this, you suspend your own decree in front of the pack. Then tell me why it was prepared before tonight. The yard tightened again. Callus's face went still. Freya looked at the writ. She saw it then. The fold lines were dry. The seal edge had not softened in rain. This paper had not been written in answer to the waking locks. It had been waiting. "Read the date," she said. Callus's eyes flashed. "You do not command the king." "No," Freya said. "I read what frightened men hide in margins." Rowan took the writ from Callus. Callus let it go because refusal would have been worse. Rowan opened it. For one moment only Rain spoke. Then Rowan read, "Second night after Frostwane moon." Mara Belwyn began to shake. Freya closed her eyes once. Second night, before Mara's false statement, before the transfer order, before the storehouse key had any lawful reason to move her record. Callus spoke quickly. "A precaution. Your decree required us to prepare for keeper obstruction." Freya opened her eyes. "You prepared to silence me before you forged the need." Callus pointed at her. "You hear her. She calls crown caution forgery." "No," Freya said. "I call it sequence." The western lock struck once. The sound was weak, too weak. The mercy rune flickered, then dimmed. Freya's stomach tightened. Callus smiled for the first time since the mud appeared. "The lock weakens because she overreaches. Mercy law cannot stand against crown isolation." Rowan looked at the western door. Freya looked at the people behind it. If Rowan let the writ stand, she would be taken from the yard. The ledgers would close. The locks would keep their claims until moonfall. And after moonfall, the refuges became crown property under the same decree Callus had already bent. All the hidden people would become evidence against themselves. All her mercy would become treason. Rowan held the writ in one hand and the ledger in the other. For the first time, he looked like a king with both blades turned inward. Callus lowered his voice. "Majesty, choose the crown. Question me after moonfall if you must. But do not let a revoked keeper break royal law before the pack." Freya almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because that was the trap. Truth later. People now. Mercy delayed until it became a grave. She looked at Rowan and did not soften. "If you choose your decree, say it plainly. Do not call it inspection." His eyes met hers. Rain ran down his jaw. The western lock gave one last faint pulse. Then the ledger in Rowan's hand burned again, not beneath Mara's name, not beneath Freya's standing, but across the witness isolation writ. The letters formed slowly. Witness isolation prepared before claim review. Then a second line appeared. Freya Ashden, to be removed before Western Record could answer. Callus's face went white. The guard stepped back. Rowan looked at the writ, then at Freya. His voice did not soften, but it changed. "Freya Ashden," he said, "if I suspend my decree, what happens to every sealed refuge at moonfall?" Freya looked toward the 12 locked doors. Behind the western one, someone sobbed in the dark. She answered without mercy for him. "They stop being your property," she said, "and start telling the truth." The first moonfall bell rang from the outer tower. It was not loud, but every person in the Hidden Refuge Yard heard it. One bell meant the day's law was closing. 2 meant crown property seal. 3 meant any unregistered soul behind a refuge door could be counted as hostile if no lawful claim stood open. Callus Varn looked toward the tower and found his courage there. "Majesty," he said, "time proves the danger. If these doors remain sealed until third bell, the crown may take them cleanly. If she interferes now, every claim becomes suspect." Freya did not look at him. She looked at the 12 doors. Not all of them were waking. That mattered. Mercy law was not panic. It did not throw open stone because a crowd demanded spectacle. It answered where a living claim had been broken. Western first. Mara's false statement. Storehouse mud. Crown override before lawful transfer. Witness isolation prepared before claim review. The path was narrow, so Freya followed it. "Give me the isolation writ," she said. Rowan Karrick's eyes sharpened. "Why?" "Because he prepared it, before he had reason to silence me." Callus stepped forward. "She intends to destroy royal evidence." Freya turned on him. "No, I intend to make it stand beside what it tried to bury." Rowan held the writ out. He did not kneel, he did not apologize, he did not offer comfort, but he gave her the paper, with his seal still bleeding black at the edge. Freya took it without touching his fingers. That small avoidance landed between them like another verdict. She crossed the yard alone. The guards parted because Rowan's eyes told them to, but Freya did not move as if escorted. She walked to the western lock with the writ in one hand and nothing in the other. No keys. No crown permission worth trusting. No title except the one Callus had failed to kill. The black mud waited beneath the keyhole. Behind the door, someone breathed too fast. Freya heard it. So did Mara Belwyn. "That is not a wolf trying to escape inspection," Mara whispered. Callus snapped. "Silence." Freya stopped before the western door. "No, let the yard hear the sound you called treason." The breathing behind the stone hitched. Rowan's voice cut through the rain. "No one speaks over the door." The order held. Freya lifted the isolation writ. "A mercy witness does not open every refuge. She opens the broken sequence. Statement. Transfer. Key. Crown override. Isolation." Callus's face hardened. "You have no moon keys." Freya looked at the lock. The keys already returned to the claim. She pressed the writ flat against the stone beside the keyhole. Nothing happened. A few elders shifted. Callus smiled. "There. Old oaths do not answer stolen authority." Freya did not move. She turned the paper once, not toward the seal, toward the fold. Callus's smile vanished. Freya saw it then, what she had missed, because the rain had softened the outer crease. The isolation writ had been folded around something narrow before it was sealed. Not a blade, not a quill. A case them. She laid the crease beneath the moon-silver lock groove. The western door struck once, not opening, remembering. The writ darkened along the fold, and a shape rose through the paper in cold silver, the outline of a key with one chipped tooth. Bryn made a broken sound. "Storehouse spare." Callus wheeled toward him. "Clerk." Rowan's voice was colder. "Let him finish." Bryn swallowed so hard Freya heard it through the rain. "The western storehouse spare has a chipped third tooth. It sticks in old locks. Warden Callus ordered it retired last winter." Callus laughed. "Retired keys are kept by clerks, guards, repair boys." Freya interrupted him. "Not after retirement. They are sealed in dead wax." She looked at Rowan. "Ask for the dead wax mark." Rowan did not ask Callus. He looked to Bren. The clerk shook as he stepped forward. "A retired key should leave no fresh access mark. If it was used, the dead wax breaks." Callus said, "This is nonsense." Freya laid her palm near the mud, close enough to feel cold rising from it, not close enough to touch the lock. If the western storehouse spare was used before Mara's transfer order, show the break. For a heartbeat, the yard held only rain. Then the black mud beneath the lock split. A thin thread of gray wax pushed up from inside it, curled like a dead worm and hardened on the stone. Freya's throat tightened. Dead wax. Broken. Rowan looked at Callus. Callus looked at the wax. For the first time, he had no sentence ready. The western lock gave a record strike. The ledger in Rowan's hands burned again. This time the words did not appear beneath Mara's statement or the transfer order. They formed along the margin where the storehouse access line had been rubbed thin. Retired storehouse spare used before claim review. The second moonfall bell rang. The sound rolled over the yard. Callus found his voice in it. Even if a retired key was used, it proves a security breach, not my hand. She still cannot identify the carrier. Freya lifted the isolation writ from the stone. The key outline remained. No, she said. But I can identify who knew the key would be needed before Mara was accused. Callus's eyes changed. Freya turned the writ so the court could see the old fold. This paper was wrapped around the spare key before it was sealed. The isolation order was not prepared to answer my witness standing. Her voice stayed steady. It carried the tool that made my witness standing necessary. Rowan's jaw tightened. Callus said nothing. Freya looked at the western door. If the writ carried the key that broke the claim, record sequence. The lock struck once. Cold light ran through the writ in Freya's hands and burned across the seal Rowan had once trusted. Isolation writ folded around retired storehouse key before Mara Belwyn was named. The yard did not gasp. It recoiled. Behind the western door, the hidden woman spoke for the first time. Voice cracked by stone and fear. Freya! Freya closed her eyes for one breath. Then she opened them and looked at Rowan Karrick. Now, she said, you know he planned to silence the witness before he wrote the crime. The third bell rope began to move in the outer tower. No sound yet. Only the long pull of the bellman's arm, seen through rain and torch smoke beyond the refuge wall. One more strike, and every sealed refuge in the yard would become crown property under Rowan Karrick's decree. Callus Varnes saw it and smiled with half his mouth. Majesty, he said, time has reached the law. Whatever old marks she has stirred, the decree still stands. At third bell, the crown takes custody. Let the doors be secured. Let the witnesses be separated. Let the traitors inside be counted properly. The woman behind the western door whispered again. Freya. That voice was thin, cracked by stone and fear, but not unfamiliar. Freya knew it from the South Refuge, from fever nights, from hands that shook around a water cup. Mara Belwyn heard it too. Her face broke. Elian. Freya did not look away from the western lock. Mara's sister. Callus turned sharply. A hidden relation strengthens the charge. She concealed family under false refuge status. No, Mara whispered. My sister was taken from the South House before I could stand. Callus lifted his voice. Enough. Grief makes women invent chains. Freya looked at him. You put one sister in the witness line and one behind a false western lock. The yard shifted. Callus did not flinch. Prove it without opening the door. That was his safest challenge. Freya could not open the refuge fully. Not yet. If the door opened before the claim sequence finished, Callus would call it contamination. If she refused, he would call it fear. Rowan looked at her. Can the lock record who is inside? No, Freya said. A mercy lock protects living names until claim is lawful. Callus smiled wider. Freya lifted the isolation writ, still marked by the outline of the retired storehouse key. But it can record what was carried to the door. Callus's smile vanished. Freya placed the writ against the western stone again. Statement. Transfer. Storehouse key. Crown override. Isolation. Retired spare. Living voice. The western rune glowed faintly. Not enough. The third bell rope pulled lower. Rowan saw it. What does it need? Freya's mouth tightened. The thing that made the false sequence powerful. Callus said quickly, she means the crown. She means to put royal authority under a keeper's trick. Freya turned to Rowan. I mean your decree seal. The yard went cold. Rowan did not move. Callus stepped into the silence. Majesty, if you place the decree seal under mercy witness review, you admit before the pack that crown law may be judged by refuge law. No, Freya said. He admits that crown law cannot hide behind itself when it touches mercy ground. Rowan looked at the sealed doors. 12 locks. 12 claims. Not all waking, not all accusing, but enough. Enough to show that his decree had not merely been harsh, it had become a road for another man's hand. The bell rope pulled lower. Callus's voice dropped. Choose carefully, Majesty. If you break the decree now, every hidden wolf in your kingdom learns that mercy law outranks the crown. Freya did not soften for Rowan. If you keep it, every frightened person behind these doors learns that your crown can be used to return them to the hands they escaped. That landed. Rowan removed the small iron seal plate from the top of the ledger. The elders stirred. Callus went white. Majesty. Rowan did not look at him. Quiet. He held the decree seal toward Freya. She did not take it. No, she said. You used it. You place it. For the first time, pain moved openly across Rowan Karrick's face. Not apology. Cost. He stepped to the western lock and pressed the iron-crowned seal against the stone beside the mercy rune. The western door struck once. The tower bell stopped before sound. The bellman froze with the rope in both hands. Cold light ran from the lock into the decree seal. Black ink bled from the iron grooves down Rowan's wrist onto the stone. The ledger in his other hand opened wider as if the rain itself had turned the page. Words carved themselves beneath the isolation writ. Elian Belwyn placed behind western lock before Mara Belwyn's statement was marked. Mara sobbed. Freya closed her eyes for half a breath. Callus moved. Not toward the gate. Toward the ledger. A small knife flashed from his sleeve, narrow and dark, meant not for flesh but paper. He lunged for the page before the next line could form. Rowan caught his wrist. The yard saw it. Callus Varn, refuge warden, with a blade over the living record. His face changed then. Not guilt. Survival. You do not understand what those doors hold, Callus hissed. Mercy made hiding places. I made them useful. Freya's blood went cold. The western lock struck again. A second line burned into the page. Western refuge route prepared for sale before crown custody. The yard recoiled. Callus twisted against Rowan's grip. Roots are bargaining tools. Border enemies pay more for hidden roads than dead refugees do for pity. Rowan's hand tightened until the knife fell. Still, the final line did not form. The western rune dimmed. Freya knew why. The lock had recorded sequence. It had shown sail. It had exposed the route. But judgment belonged to the law that had allowed the route to exist. The iron-crowned seal remained black against the stone. Rowan looked at Freya. What is the final cost? Freya looked at the decree seal bleeding onto his hand. You cannot correct this while keeping the decree whole. The third bell rope trembled in the tower. Callus laughed once, breathless and trapped. If he breaks it, he breaks crown authority over every refuge in the kingdom. Freya did not deny it. Rowan looked toward the 12 sealed doors. Behind them, the hidden people waited without sound. Then the third bell began to fall. The third bell fell. Rowan Karrick moved before sound could become law. He tore the iron-crowned seal from the western stone with his bare hand. Black ink and old silver cut across his palm. The bell's first note broke over the yard, then cracked in the air like ice under weight. The outer tower shuddered. The bellman stumbled back from the rope, staring as the bronze mouth above him went still before it could finish the strike. Callus Varn stopped laughing. Rowan held the broken seal in his bleeding hand. The refuge punishment decree is suspended. The elders stirred in alarm. Callus found his voice first. Majesty, you cannot suspend crown custody at third bell without council witness. Rowan looked at him. Then witness it. He turned, not to Callus, not to the elders, but to the yard, the guards, the clerks, Mara Belwyn, the frightened pack members who had been forced to stand in rain and watch Mercy put on trial. I signed a decree that gave wardens power over hidden refuge claims, Rowan said, his voice carried without softness. That power was used before lawful transfer, before claim review, before witness hearing, and before the people behind these doors could speak. Callus stepped forward. Used by emergency authority, used to sell a route. The words struck the yard harder than the bell. Callus went still. Rowan looked down at the ledger. Western Refuge Route prepared for sale before Crown custody. Cold light burned the line brighter in answer. Freya stood near the western lock, rain running down her face, hands empty. She did not smile. She did not look relieved. Too many people were still behind stone for relief. Rowan turned to her. Mercy Witness Ashden. The title moved through the yard, like something old waking under snow. Freya's jaw tightened. Do not crown me with what you failed to protect. I am not crowning you, Rowan said. I am asking what the law requires. She studied him then. Not forgiven, not softened, but seen. The decree must be broken where it touched the claim, she said. Not hidden, not amended later, broken here before the doors. Callus's face sharpened. If he breaks it here, every refuge in the kingdom falls outside royal punishment. Freya looked at him. That was always the point of refuge. Rowan closed his bleeding hand around the cracked seal. Iron bent. The sound was small. The consequence was not. Across the Hidden Refuge Yard, every crown mark stamped above the 12 doors went black, then split down the center. The old mercy runes beneath them brightened, not blazing, not triumphant, only steady, as if remembering how to breathe. Rowan's blood fell onto the ledger. A new line formed. Refuge claims removed from royal punishment until mercy witness review. Callus lunged. 2 guards caught him before he reached the book. He twisted, furious now, all careful procedures stripped away. You will lose border control. You will lose the hidden roads. You will lose every bargain that kept enemies from your walls. Rowan looked at him. You sold my people and called it border control. They were liabilities. Mara Belwyn made a sound as if struck. Freya moved then, not toward Callus, toward the western lock. She placed the isolation writ, the broken dead wax, and the ledger page beneath the moon-silver groove. Statement false, transfer false, storehouse key unlawful, crown override broken, witness isolation void. The lock turned once, then twice, then a third time. This time, the door opened. Cold air breathed out from behind the western refuge. A woman stumbled into the rain, thin, bruised, wrapped in an old refuge cloak. Mara ran to her before any guard could stop her. Elian. Mara sobbed. Elian Belwyn clung to her sister with shaking hands. No one in the yard called her traitor. No one dared. Freya did not go to them. She stayed by the open door and watched the threshold. One refuge opened did not mean all truth was finished. It meant the law had chosen where to begin. The western lock gave one final record strike. The ledger burned. Callus Varn transferred living claims to western route for sale. Callus stopped struggling, not because he accepted judgment, because there was nowhere left to hide inside procedure. Rowan stepped toward him. Refuge Warden Callus Varn, by witness record, lock sequence, broken wax, and your own prepared isolation writ, you are stripped of office. Callus spat rain and rage. By whose law? Freya answered before Rowan could. Mercy law. The western lock struck once. The 11 sealed doors answered with 11 quiet pulses. Not opening. Acknowledging. Rowan looked at Freya. What happens to the others? They are reviewed one claim at a time, she said. No spectacle, no forced names, no crown seizure at moonfall. And you will review them? Freya looked at the keys. They had begun to appear again, not around her throat, not in her hand, but in the locks where living claims waited. Moon-silver teeth glowed faintly from 12 doors. Each returned to its own burden. I will witness them, she said. I will not own them. Rowan bowed his head once, not deeply enough to look theatrical, enough that the yard saw the king lower himself before the law he had nearly erased. Then he turned to the witnesses. From this night forward, no refuge in Karrick territory will be converted to punishment ground by crown decree alone. Refuge claims pass under mercy witness review before warden, council, or king may touch them. An elder opened his mouth. Rowan looked at him, and the elder closed it. Freya almost felt satisfaction. Almost. But then Rowan faced her again, and the rain seemed quieter between them. I cannot return what I threw into the mud, he said. No, Freya said. His face tightened at the answer, but he did not look away. I can pay for where it fell, he said. The Western Storehouse, the Refuge Office, and every route record tied to Callus Varn will be opened under your witness. My decree will be read aloud in judgment with my name still on it. That mattered. Not enough to heal. Enough to begin being true. Freya stepped past him to the judgment stone. The same stone where she had stood accused. The same yard that had watched her keys vanish. She placed her hand on the wet surface. I am Freya Ashden, she said, voice steady. Not traitor, not hidden queen, not chosen because a king finally looked closely. Mercy witness standing unbroken. The moon keys answered from the locks, each with one clear note. Mara Belwyn stood with Elian in her arms and wept openly. Bryn lowered his head. The soldiers who had laughed did not laugh now. Callus was dragged from the yard past the black mud that had refused the rain. Rowan did not stand in front of Freya. He stood behind her. When she finally turned, he was there with his bleeding hand closed at his side, the broken crown seal ruined beyond repair. I will not ask you to forgive me tonight, he said. Good, Freya answered. A faint, dangerous warmth touched his eyes. Will you let me stand where I can see the next record before I sign another law? Freya looked at the open western refuge, at the sisters holding each other, at the 11 doors still waiting. Then she looked back at the Alpha King. You may stand, she said. You may listen. Rowan bowed his head again. And when the law asks what I failed to hear? Freya turned toward the first waiting lock. Then answer. Behind her, the king did not move ahead. He stayed one step back while Freya Ashden lifted her empty hand toward the next mercy door, and the moon keys, one by one, began to turn toward truth.